So I'm Dan. I help run ADI. ADI, yeah, that's them there. You probably didn't see us yesterday because, as Nick said, we were organizing DevFest, which is a hackathon that happens at Columbia. ADI stands for All Development International. We have a horrible name. It's the Application Development Initiative. You can blame Zach Sims for that, but we stand by it, and it's pretty fun. But anyway, my talk is called Rethinking Scale. I'm going to be talking about something that pretty much everyone has as an implicit want for their hackathon, which is like, we want it to be big, right? MLH was founded on the principle of like, we want more hackathons. And all of us are here trying to grow our events, make them better. So that's what I'm talking about. I'll give you an outline. This is equivalent to Spark Notes, so if you're going to fall asleep, look at this slide, check in about 20 minutes. You should be good. So we're going to talk about what do I really mean when I say scale. There's a lot of different ways to interpret that. I'm going to try and define that pretty carefully. I'm going to make some assumptions about this talk. And then I'm going to talk about DevFest, how we scale. I'll talk about scaling wrong, because you can scale wrong, and it happens a lot. And then there'll be a Q&A, discussion, etc. So let's talk about scale. Scale. Ooh. Okay, so there's a lot of different kinds of scale. This might be what you think of when you think scale. And that's because right now, scale means bigger. If we said, how do you scale your event? What you're really saying is like, how do you get more people? How do you get more sponsors? How do you get bigger? But if it's something that we all implicitly want, do we really want size, or do we want awesomeness? I think Justin said this right, that we want our events to be better, right? So I want to talk about scale in terms of meaning better. And the reason why scale has to mean better and it can't just mean bigger is because scale is a reflection of our values. So like, if you scale the amount of prizes that are given out at your event, you're telling all your attendees that you care about prizes. That's fine. Prizes are great. I won my first hackathon prize last year, and it was awesome. I never won, and I was like, oh, I don't need to win. Prizes are dumb. And then I won one. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So, scale is a reflection of our values. So when you're scaling, you have to be thinking about how you're scaling and what that means about your event. So scale is also really hard, right? Because it takes a lot of energy. Scale is inherently risky because you have to put in a lot of energy and you're hoping that you get something good out of it. So if you fundraise $150,000 for your event, that's risky because if the event goes poorly, your sponsors aren't going to come back. All that work is for nothing, right? And there's a lot of different ways that scale can come about. The most common thing we think about when we think scale is, startups, hashtag, is 10x, right? Like, sometimes it's like taking the thing that you do well and doing it 10x. So like, if you are a company, you pick the one thing you do well and you do it 10x better. And that is often a great way to scale. But scale can also mean starting over completely. So that's what we did at DevFest. If you came to DevFest 2013, it's like, it was branded as a week-long build an app that's actually good because you have a week to build it instead of just 24 hours a-thon, right? So, and that was great, and it was like fun event, but it wasn't going to go anywhere. And in 2014, we decided that we needed to start over completely. And so that's sort of the kind of scale that I'm thinking about, the kind of scale where instead of just doing more, you I almost said rethink scale, which is the title of my talk. Really embarrassing. I'm glad I missed that by a hair's margin. Anyway, so I'm going to be answering the how can we question. I'm also in Design for America. Sorry, this is a tangent. And there's this principle of how you go about doing good design, and this is more like human-centered design, where you ask a how can we question. So my how can we question is going to be, how can we scale our events in accordance with our values? So this is sort of what we're trying to get at. So now I'm going to make some assumptions. This is where I get to cheat. So, assumptions incoming. So I'm going to assume that you want to scale. And this is actually really interesting because I didn't think that this was going to be a problem until I started to think about good examples of like hackathons that I love. And if you want to scale, you need to have the energy for it. This is pretty obvious. If you are a 4-person club who wants to throw your first hackathon, you might not have the energy to think about scale in the ways that I'm going to try and think about scale. So I'm going to assume you have the energy for it. I'm also going to assume that you want it, that it's needed. I was thinking of Hackcon, which I've gone to now for this will be my 6th time this spring, and yeah, Hackcon kicks ass. But Hackcon really hasn't changed that much in the past 3 years. In my attendance of it, it's been pretty much the same event, and I've loved it every year. It's probably my favorite hackathon, probably even over DevFest. Maybe I'm just nostalgic, but I love Hackcon and it hasn't changed. So you might not need to scale your event. I'm gonna assume that you do for this talk. I'm also gonna assume attendees come first. This is one where I'm gonna slyly define this because attendees actually have to come first over a lot of people. They have to come first over your sponsors. So at DevFest, we actually talked about dropping all sponsorship, starting a week-long or a weekend program where we farm out our tech talent to stupid MBA people who would pay us tons of money to learn stuff that we would also publish for free. We thought about this. We thought about raising our hackathon's worth of funding on a weekend of teaching people to code and then not having sponsorships because we were would that make the event better? So you have to be able to consider that over sponsors, right? You also have to be able to sacrifice your own body and soul to make the event go well. I'm gonna assume that you're willing to do that. And finally, and possibly most controversially, brand, right? If you're the hackathon that is the, I'm gonna say it. If you're the premier hackathon, that's like Rutgers or something, right? Or no, the DevFest? I don't know. But if you're the premier hackathon, can you, and you want to scale, and scaling your event means you have to not be the premier hackathon anymore, will you scale? I'm going to assume the answer is yes for the rest of this talk. Also, logistics are settled, so if you don't have enough space, money, food, internet, your event's not going to happen, so deal with that first and then let's talk, or deal with that before and now let's talk now. So I'm going to assume that you've dealt with that stuff. So given all that, let's jump in. I'm going to talk about DevFest. So what is DevFest, really? DevFest is very different than a lot of hackathons because it's a week-long workshop series with an 18-hour hackathon at the end. It started yesterday with our kickoff, and then it goes all week. We have workshops every night. We teach people web development, and now we're also going to teach them to code. And then we have a hackathon Friday night to Saturday. So that's what DevFest is. Talk about our values, because remember, scale is a reflection of our values. So how we scale is really going to be how we're scaling our values, which are education, community, and technical excitement. This is something that we defined as a club a couple years ago, and now we've scaled DevFest along these vectors. So we're going to talk about each one, and then I'm also going to make a value statement about each one. I want to just mention that I think that value statements are really important because if you can't put into words why you're doing it, you should stop. So I'm going to put in some value statements to sort of show you what that looks like. So talk about education. This is kind of our main thing. In 2014, we scaled education by killing that week long of hack nights where you had people come in and talk about Android. So I think the talk in 2013 was here are all the different screen sizes. Go start hacking. That was the Android talk. So we didn't do that anymore, and now we introduced a 12-hour web development curriculum that we teach over the course of the week to people that have programmed before but never built an app. And in 2014, after flipping that, we got between 100 and 200 students in each session. So that's Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, hackathon on Friday. And as a result of this change, over 50% of our demos were from entirely first-timer teams, which is amazing. And that's something I'm really proud of. And so this is sort of a follow-up from my talk at Hackcon 1, which is called something about awesomeness. Awesome when awesomeness is isolating or something like that. So and I said that we were going to try and do this. It was also the Sunday after kickoff, so we hadn't really done it yet. So I'm back to say that it worked. 50% of our demos were first-timer teams, so that's really cool. Yeah, that's worthy of applause. Not for us, but for the people. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about 2015, this year. And remember, this is also Sunday, so we haven't done the week yet, but we did kickoff. And we did the prep. And so what we're doing this year is we're scaling the part of the workshops that people love the most that we didn't actually think they were going to, this is not what we thought they were going to like. We thought we were going to like the content. They like the content, but what they like more were the TAs. We had like maybe 10 or 15 TAs from our club that would sort of walk around during the workshops. They were all wearing the same shirt, and you could ask them a question. They'd help fix your Vagrant setup or whatever. And so we're doing that even better this year. We have a 2 to 3 hour training for TAs of like how do you actually be a good TA and what's the content. So, and we're scaling that up to 40 students. We also have 8 student teachers as opposed to 2. This is really important. It's amazing what studies will show about how just having a different looking person in front of the room can change someone's learning experience. So instead of having the same teacher every night, which was me because I wrote the content, now we have a different teacher every night, which I am really proud of. It takes a lot of work. We had to sit down with each teacher and run through the content and do a workshop. They had to give their talk to me and some other people and then give them feedback. It's a lot of work, but it was worth it. And then we're also introducing this new track, new curriculum for non-programmers. So we marketed DevFest as being the first time it can be your first time to build an app, or it can be the first time where you learn to code. And so we have a track where they do Codecademy with lots of TAs helping them along each step of the way, and then we have some cool, silly command line projects for them to do at the end of the week. So that's what we're doing this year. Maybe I'll be back a year from today telling you how it went, but who knows. So all of this, I'm going to sum up in a value statement, which is that we believe that everyone should have the opportunity to learn to code at DevFest. So that's our value. So next I'm going to talk about community, which is our second value. Community at DevFest comes in a bunch of different forms, and the way that we achieve it is some fairly straightforward. Like, for example, it's a week long, so we actually give people time to socialize and eat and relax. It's not a 24 hours, get there as early as possible, run up to the 13th floor and hack until you drop. It's like, you have a week, relax, meet people, form a good team, get a real idea, learn something, build something, right? So giving people time to socialize it makes it more about the community than about the app. We also established a strong code of conduct. This is something that I had not thought about because MLH has that PDF that is all on all of our websites probably now. That is pretty good, right? But some people in ADI were like, well, that's their code of conduct. What's our code of conduct? So we took the MLH code of conduct, forked it, took a lot of the great content that's in there, and then also defined some other scenarios and terms that were really specific to our community. And I think that that's really important because, I don't know, I think there's definitely a different feel when you say, hey, welcome to SharkAxe 5000 with a code of conduct sponsored by this organization that we're a part of, as opposed to, this is our code of conduct for our community. And part of that is that ADI happens all year, so our code of conduct has to be relevant all year. But I don't know, I think there's a lot of good content there, but it's nice to be branded as a DevFest code of conduct. So just a thing. Use inclusive language. This is kind of a dumb thing to say, but we have a workshop on APIs, and so we were talking about JSON. And in the example JSON document, we created a person that went to Columbia and was a developer, and the name was John Doe, because what else would you pick? So that's the kind of thing that can be those microaggressions are really important to resolve. And so, for example, all of our code samples have female names in them. So it's little things like that where inclusive language can go a really far distance in terms of making people feel like they're the people that belong at the event. So yeah, and I guess the last thing is sort of a little bit more touchy-feely in terms of we try and focus on people, not apps. So we're not here to see what you are going to build. We're just happy that you're here. That's a difference that's kind of hard to communicate in words on slides. I thought a lot about how I could like write that. I don't really know how, but I can say that if you can make your event about the people there and not what happens there, that is like a really strong way to build community. ADI also happens after DevFest, so we go on and on and on. We have like 120 events a year, I think was the latest number. Our most popular is Cookies and Code, which you've probably heard me talk about before because it's like my favorite thing ever. But Wednesday nights in the room that isn't ours for the rest of the week, I was just talking about it, but from 10 to 12 on Wednesdays, that's ours. We make some homemade cookies, and people come, hang out, code, maybe work on homework, maybe board games, probably, stuff like that. We have an alumni dinner, bring in our alumni. It's pretty self-explanatory. We have a house that we got, a special interest community housing that's sort of like another housing option for people that are sophomores and up. And so we sort of have this residential community. We have an online community that all sort of like feeds into each other. So like all of these things make it feel not just like this concept of like a pop-up club, the club that only exists one day a semester, 2 days a semester, and then they lie dormant and you're on their listserv until they pop up again next term. That's not what we want to do. We want to be we want to be a club that forms a community that exists every day, every week. And I think that's really important. So all of this is about like making people feel like they belong. So our value statement is that everyone should feel like they belong at DevFest. Cool. So the last one's technical excitement. And when I was writing this talk, I was thinking about scaling technical excitement. I was like, is this really a problem? Because we don't work on this very directly. We're not like, you don't like apps enough. That's like not something you say to people at hackathons, right? It like really isn't a problem most of the time, right? So I was like, okay, like, great. This slide, I'll just like talk about some fluff about tech is cool and then move on. But then I was like, wait a minute. What does scaling tech really mean? And I was actually listening to the talk about the hacker survey yesterday, and I was thinking about scaling tech, and like, does this mean that we're done? Like, if it's not a problem that people at hackathons are excited about hacking, then does that mean we're done? And the answer is actually no, because when you survey everyone in a room, you have a bias on that survey for the people that actually walked into the room. So scaling tech is really about inclusivity. Aha, the buzzword of the event. Everyone talks about inclusivity. What does it really mean? I'm not going to say that I know better than everyone else, but I know that it's not just about feeling welcome. It's about wanting to come in the first place. So I'm going to share some stats from this year that we recorded some stats with our registration form to try and get a sense of whether or not we were attracting the entire Columbia community. And I'll share them now. Actually, the people that are here from DevFest haven't seen these. They've been hard at work, so get ready, guys and girls. So we asked this question, what gender do you identify as? There was also a 30-message long email chain about the options that should be on this form. So if you're curious about that, talk to us later. But here's what we got. We have 40% female, 59 male, and one answered one of the three options, trans, non-binary, or prefer not to say. And so this is like good for us in that it's better than our CS department, which just celebrated the 33% mark. There's 2 guys for every girl, yay! But we're working on this, but it shows that we're moving in the right direction if we're beating the curve on our computer science department. So moving in the right direction on this. Not totally there. And yeah, we had 1,200 registrants for DevFest. All of the questions you're going to see were optional, and 1122 filled them out. So pretty good sampling. We also asked, is DevFest your first hackathon? This is actually my favorite slide because we asked 1123 people, 1123 people answered, and 819 said yes. So 819 people signed up for DevFest as their first hackathon. There's like 250, 300 people that are CS majors at Columbia. Our CS major spans our engineering and our college. like I think my entire year is probably 1,000 people. So, 819 people decided that they wanted this to be their first hackathon. So that's actual growth, right? Growth is not like we have this community and we're getting a larger pie of this community. Growth is we're growing the community. So we're growing the people that are attending hackathons. That's what growth is. So we also asked, what ethnicity do you identify as? And this definitely followed our Columbia data in terms of heavy swing towards Asian Pacific Islander, white. There isn't any published data on this for us to know how well we're doing with respect to the Columbia community. Oh, by the way, 95% of people who signed up for DevFest have a Columbia unique identifier. So these are Columbia students, not from other schools, although there are some people from other schools here too. Yeah, I don't really know how to analyze this. I wanted to show it, so I didn't leave it off. But because I don't have a basis for it, it's just more interesting to think about. This is my favorite. This is my second favorite. The other thing was my favorite. I get lots of favorites. We asked what part of DevFest are you most excited for? It was a text box. You can choose to answer it. Because it was a big text box, we only got 550, about half of our people. I put it through a word cloud online, and this is what I got out. Pretty obvious, right? I'll blow it up for you. So I think Sharek said, who wants to learn to code at a hackathon? The 819 people who signed up for DevFest as the first time want to learn at a hackathon. Can you see it? It's right there in red. Okay? I don't know how to be more obvious about this. People want to learn at a hackathon. Okay? This is a linear scale, meaning that the size of the object is linearly correlated with how many people use that word. It also looks like people are excited to build new apps at workshops and meet people and build something at a hackathon. Maybe learn to code in Python. Those are all things that we're doing. But, so learning was far and away the most used word in this form. So, I don't know how to, this should be irrefutable that if you market your event right, if you organize your event right, people will come and they will want to learn at it. So all of this is to say that we want to grow our community to encompass the entire community of people that are interested in learning something about tech. But it's not just about making people feel welcome. So the value statement here is that we must be proactive in bringing new and amazing people to DevFest. So that's what we believe. These three value statements are our value statements. You should make value statements for your hackathon. If you don't have them, write them today or this weekend or something. Because I don't know what you're doing if you don't know what you're doing, right? So now I'm going to talk about scaling wrong. The cheeseburger photo. I tried to find something that supersized me, but it was just the guy with fries in his mouth. Anyway, so, you can scale wrong. A lot of people here in this room are scaling right, but there are ways that you can scale wrong. The most obvious way is throwing money at a problem. That's not to say that if you have a big budget, you're scaling wrong. It means that your big budget has to go somewhere, and it has to go towards your values. So if you write some value statements, and then you look at your budget, and you're throwing money somewhere else, that money is being spent wrong. So don't spend that money that way. I happen to know, based on the new open data, hackathon data initiative, that our budget is 1/10 of some of the budgets in this room. So we can throw a pretty kick-ass event, I think it's pretty kick-ass, at a pretty low budget, because we only spend money on the things that matter. And part of that is spending human capital rather than financial capital, right? I spent hours and hours and hours the past few weeks not calling sponsors and getting money, but sitting down with ADI members and then trying to teach them how to be teachers so we can get more teachers at DevFest, right? And then the people that are spending time on our hackathon are not making sure that the internet works or running around with food. They're talking to people and being really inspiring TAs. So spend your human capital, not your financial capital. So then there's the too big to moderate slide. This is, Alex, you gave a good talk yesterday about hackathon hackers. And I think that there's something to say about the value of subgroups. But if your community gets too big that you can't control it, you're scaling wrong. You could be forgetting your values in terms of Anyone might remember this slide from last year? Yeah, so if you're scaling somewhere else than your values, you're scaling wrong. So I'll be quick. The takeaways here, just watch this. Is it GIF playing? Yeah. This is an amazing, Super Bowl's today. You see that? That is amazing. I had a lot of fun on Giphy yesterday. Anyway, so human capital beats financial capital any day. So spend your human capital. Scale is a reflection of our values. So determine your values and then scale according to them. Hackathon better, not bigger. Thanks.